Well, good evening, and welcome to everyone that is here tonight. This is our only meeting in January, so we have a number of things to do, but I have been reminded that this is not the only event going on tonight. That there's a very important ball game being played. But I do appreciate all of y'all being here tonight. And we'll start, as we always do, with the moment of silence. So I invite you to join us if you would like to, please. Amen. Thank you. And now at this time, do we have someone that's going to lead us in the pledge, or?
No.
Okay. All right. If you'll stand with me, then we'll have the pledge to the flag. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Ms. McCormick, if you would let me, I'd be happy to take Roman numeral 3 there if I could.
I will let you do that.
So January is School Board Member Appreciation Month, and I think I can speak for a lot of people in Oconee County that we're very appreciative of the 5 of you. We have been blessed in Oconee County to have a very supportive school board, people who are dedicated to students and to teachers and who do this for the right reasons. And that's not the case everywhere. You guys get e-clippings, the news clippings from around the state just like we get, and it's just not that way everywhere. So I want to, on behalf of the staff in the school district, all of our teachers and students, and just the community in general, I want to say thank you for your effort, the time you put in, and your dedication to our students. And we'd like to give you a small gift on School Board Appreciation the night we honor that. So Ms. Dodd and Ms. Gibson took a field trip to one of our own teachers' art galleries last month. And so the gift you're getting tonight is handcrafted by Stan DeBose, who owns End of the Road Studios with his wife, which is on Bear Swamp, just off of Bear Swamp Road. And he made these little pieces of pottery for you. And we thought that would be a good way to say thank you, to give you something that one of our own teachers made. So anyway, thank you for what you guys do. I appreciate it.
Hold it up so I can, I got to tweet something.
Yeah, good stuff.
Get a little
Oh, that's
advertising in
beautiful.
for him as well. So.
Oh, gorgeous. Thank you. Well, I know on behalf of everyone sitting up here, I appreciate this so much. I always look forward to the Christmas cards that come from the school where Stan is the art instructor, because we get such wonderful little pieces of pottery. So this is just wonderful. And again, we are so privileged to be able to serve in a district that does as well as Oconee County does, and with all the wonderful teachers and administrators and everyone that works here. So we just thank you so much.
Amen.
We're just as appreciative of you.
We are thankful to have all of you, and just wanted to say happy School Board Appreciation Month.
Thank you. Thank you. This is so nice. Appreciate it so much. The first thing that we need to do tonight is the approval of our agenda. This is the agenda for January 11th, and this is our regular board meeting. There is not another meeting this month, so this will be our regular board meeting. Did anyone have any changes or anything that they saw we needed to add or delete? All right, if there's no objections then, the agenda for January 11th, 2021 regular board meeting stands approved. Do we have any public comment?
We do not.
Okay. All right. The first item that we have is the approval of the minutes from the December 14th, 2020 work session, our regular board meeting for December. Do I hear a motion that those be approved, or was there anything to be changed on them? I think there was a change on them earlier that was noted, and that has been changed on the website, and it's also changed on the official minutes that I have to sign. So with no changes there, we will let those December 14th, 2020 work session regular board meeting minutes be approved. And now we'll have the superintendent update. Dr. Thorsland?
Sure, thank you. Just a quick update. As you have been aware, just watching the news and reading, I guess, local media outlets, cases of COVID are climbing in Oconee County. They're also climbing in the school district of Oconee County. We've had quite a few cases recently. We're reporting double digits most days now instead of single digits like we were. However, our folks are still working hard, and we're still holding school, and we're going to keep holding school as long as we can. We have gotten somewhat positive news with the vaccine. We've got probably 20 to 25 of our employees who, no, it would be more than that, it would be more like 30 or 40 employees that will qualify to get the vaccine in the first round, round 1A, phase 1A. And then we really hope that phase 1B will come quickly, and that's what will be the majority of our teachers. So, so we're looking forward to that, and we certainly hope that that will at least lessen maybe some of the anxiety amongst our employees when we're able to get that. The vaccine has not been approved for students yet, so no one under the age of 18 qualifies for the vaccine at this point. But we're still doing the best we can. But I do think that by and large, our students and our families are appreciative of the fact that they're able to be in school. In December, the COVID leave legislation, I guess, that was passed by the federal government that mandated that employers give a certain amount of leave for COVID to employees who were affected by that. Either they got it themselves or a family member who they cared for got it. That sunsetted December 31st. We made the decision to extend that leave to our employees at least indefinitely right now. Our thought process is that we would extend it at least until the vaccine is offered to all of our employees. There is a second round of funding coming to schools. The legislation that was passed federally just in the last couple of weeks that sent the $600 to individuals, well, there was quite a bit of K-12 school funding attached to that. My understanding is that we're going to get actually more funding than we got in the CARES Act. Is that?
That's what they're talking about. We don't have an official number, but based on the amount that's committed, it looks like it would be.
It looks like it'll be, you know, a fairly good allocation of funding to school districts. So we feel like we'll have some additional funding to cover any necessary leave, and that just, we didn't feel like that would be a good stance to take with our employees. If you get sick with COVID and you have to be home for 10 days, you have to use your personal leave for that. When we didn't do that, and honestly the government didn't allow us to do that the first semester, but we felt like extending that. So we've done that. The other thing I wanted to touch base on tonight was, I know when you five were up here for one of the School Boards Association trainings several weeks ago, you heard a speaker talk about unfunded mandates, and you were a little bit curious about how that affected us as a school district. So we've talked about that, and quite honestly, we don't see that as a huge problem in our state. We don't see a lot of things that are mandated by the legislature or really even the State Department of Education that we have to do but yet they don't give us the funding to do it. There are a few minor things, but when you consider that our budget is $100 million a year, we're not talking millions of dollars. Maybe some things that we have to do that would be thousands of dollars. But Ms. Moore has been talking to Ms. Simmons. Most of those mandates would come around the instructional side of things. However, the Office of School Facilities is something that's maybe not officially an unfunded mandate, but the Office of School Facilities does cost us money. It's not in the operating budget. It would be on the capital side of the house. But Ms. Moore agreed to share a couple of things for me tonight, just to help answer your questions.
So a couple of the things that we're not really mandated to do, but we do participate in, and the state pays a portion of those. One of those is nurses. We get some funding for nurses in elementary schools. It's not enough to cover the full salary and benefits for those nurses. But we're not required to do that. We chose to do that, and we've chosen to have nurses in all the schools now, middle and high. That's on us. So that's not really something that we're required to do, but it is, they fund about 60% of what our elementary nurses cost us in a year. Career specialists, we get an incentive to staff our middle and high school career counseling departments at a 300-to-1 ratio. We're not required to do that either. We do follow that, and we have an agreement with the state. We have 8 counselors, career counselors, and we get about 58% of the funding for those also. And then reading coaches, again, we're not required to have reading coaches in all of our elementary schools. We do, and they pay about 60% of those salaries and benefits also. And there's some other testing things, like we do MAP testing. They fund a portion of that, not the full amount. They are requiring now the universal screener, and that's for part of the MTSS program. Is that what it's called?
That's correct.
And we're not getting funding for that. It's not a big deal. We've spent about $50,000 this year for that. But those are the things that we could come up with as a team. We didn't. They're nothing really big. But if you want more information, something else you want to ask about, I'd be happy to do some investigating.
Do you have a total of the actual cost on those items that you just mentioned?
I do. I didn't bring them with me tonight, but I do have them. I'm happy to send that to you.
Okay. Did anyone else have any questions on that? I know that was something we talked about.
I think those are great services that
Exactly. We shouldn't do
students
that.
really benefit from, so I salute you for doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not a one of those I think we could do without.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And we do feel, especially by our local delegation, I feel supported by them. Thomas Alexander, Bill Whitmire, Bill Sanford, they're always willing to listen, always eager to hear our opinion locally on how their legislation affects us as a school district. So we just don't feel like that's a tremendous issue for us. Now, we are fortunate. We're in a wealthy county as far as our tax base is concerned. Having new power, having the lakes communities here, it allows us to do things that many school districts don't have the flexibility to do. So we are fortunate, but we just don't feel like that's a tremendous strain on us at this point. And that's all I have.
Okay, all right, great.
Unless there are any questions, we're happy to entertain any questions, just in general, if someone has them.
What, you mentioned OSF, what's their percentage,
The,
you think?
can I take this? The biggest problem we, mainly me and Richard Alexander, have with OSF is it's kind of redundant in the fact that we have to hire, so for the Career Center, we had to hire a third-party inspector that we paid, several $100,000 to go behind, make sure everything was done right, make sure everything was up to code, and send the reports to OSF and that. And then they, in turn, and he was great, the one we got was great, which is, it's a flip of the coin on who you get. But they then in turn come up there and go through and go over the exact same thing that you're paying the third-party inspectors to do. And typically the problem we have with OSF is getting them scheduled to come in a timely manner because, our third-party inspector will come when we tell them to because we're paying them. OSF doesn't necessarily have the same, because they're all over the state and there's a limited number of them. So, we spend, like I say, several $100,000, our percentage of the budget, to have somebody who's on site on a regular basis looking over the construction company and the subcontractors and making sure we're doing what we're supposed to. And then we got to get in line to get somebody from OSF to come. And if you get the wrong person, they could just be make it real difficult.
There are a lot of people that work in school districts that wonder if OSF even needs to exist in its present form, that it creates a lot of red tape that's unnecessary. Do you agree with that?
Yes, and we even got something from another superintendent who asked us to potentially cite instances to a member of not our legislative delegation, but his, because that person was going to, in the legislative session, talk about whether that needs to be there or not, and whether that can be handled in a different way. So we didn't see anything, because I'm not going to, complain and do that. But we do have some difficulty with them, and that's one that not always, it's not like we're paying them a lot of money for that. We pay for their travel and those kind of things when they come up here and that. But just the extra work that it causes, or the delays that it causes because they can't meet your schedule, or they find what they think is one thing the way they interpret the code that makes it difficult, where you've got a bathroom fixture a quarter of an inch off in their minds, and you got to go back and redo the whole thing. So. Does that answer?
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. All right, Mrs. Moore, our December financial report.
Okay, you guys have had it for a few days, so it's pretty much standard, nothing out of the ordinary this time, but I'll be happy to answer questions if you have some.
Anybody have any questions? We'll start seeing some of that tax money soon.
Yes.
I didn't see any.
I have the next item also if
Okay.
you don't have no questions on it.
Okay. I think that's good.
This is a procurement code exemption request. We just want to get it on your radar. It will take amendment to our policy. So, but this is for our copiers. We have copiers in all the schools, and the system that we use right now is we have a contract with Sharp. It's a 5-year contract. We would like for you to allow us to exempt this procurement so that we would not have to go to bid. And the reasons are because it is such a big and important part of the school district. It takes a lot. We have the way that the printers work. We can print to any printer in the building, and it takes a lot of technology setup and maintenance to be able to do that. So we're going to ask that you allow us to exempt that procurement so that we can continue with the one that we have right now. Not saying that we would never look for another vendor, but at the current time, we're happy with what we've got.
Is it true, Gloria, that technology is largely exempted from our procurement code?
Yes.
And in the past, while copiers were technology, they used to be, you put a piece of paper on the screen, you hit print, and it printed what that piece of paper said. Now they're meshed together. They're no longer separate items, because now we send things from our computers to the copier, where our computers and our copying system can't be undone now. So we're asking you really just to move the copier over to our technology side. We can't get a new copier without our technology department being, greatly involved in that process. So we feel like it's a better home there, and it just puts copiers on the same side of the procurement house as our technology items.
It's just too disruptive to have to change the whole system that often. It'd be like me trying to change our accounting system every 5 years. That would be a disaster.
So instead of putting it back up for rebid on June 30th at this end of date, we would just continue that contract?
We would, yes.
And we can still shop and make sure that we're not overpaying for our copies. We're not asking to do a sweetheart deal for a company or anything like that. We're still going to make sure we're getting a good deal, but we just don't want to have to go through that long process every 5 years. A lot of those copier contracts are on state contracts, so we can compare what we're paying to other districts and to the state contract to make sure we're not out of line. But it is such an involved process now. We just feel like this would be.
If you happen to check and find out that the company was maybe overcharging you, or you felt like they were overcharging you, is there room for negotiating with them? Would you be able to negotiate with the same company and say, look, I can get this somewhere else, or much less than what you're charging?
Right. I definitely think we could. And moving it over to the technology side doesn't mean we can't bid it. So we could rebid it. It just means we don't have to on that strict schedule.
It'd be just like we do when we do the Chromebooks or something and we have a big order. We try several different vendors to see who gives us the best price, whether it be because we have a bulk order or, and it's not just price too, it's also service and the whole package, but it would be along those same lines.
Anybody else have questions about that?
And since that's a policy change, it would be February and March. So next meeting, we would have that as a action item with the actual policy call number and such.
Okay. All right. And now, Mrs. Hughes, a student services update for us.
Wait, can I see it here, or do I need to, what do I need to do?
I go to
Yeah, why don't you come up to the lectern
Okay,
here?
I gotta take off my mask. It fogs my glasses. I'm having to get used to wearing glasses again.
So last month,
I hate to turn my back to this.
It's okay. I was here and shared about our student behavioral health committee.
Okay.
And this month, we thought that Ms. Hughes could come share, because I know there have been a lot of questions about how we track down students who aren't logging into their computers and things like that. And Ms. Hughes is front and center with that in our district, so we thought it'd be good for her to come share some of the
Okay,
information.
so you want me to talk about several of the things that I do? Okay, so I'm kind of a jack of all trades. I do lots of different things. Probably the majority of the things that I do are discipline, and which also leads into expulsions. Where, students get in trouble and they're put up for expulsions, and I'm the hearing officer. I am happy to report, and I'm looking at some numbers this year, but I compared to where we were this time last year, we're half. We were at 52 expulsions right now last year. We're at about 26 this year. I have some theories about why they're down, but I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of the COVID protocols and different things like that. So that's one of the things that I do. A huge part of what I do is attendance and truancy, and I crunch some numbers. Right now, I primarily concentrated on kids who obviously not coming to school. Right now, they're kind of in two different categories. They're the SDOC at home kids, and then they're the kids who do come face to face. I I have spent a lot of time with a lot of the SCFC kids at home. I am concerned with some of them. I think some of them, when they chose that option in the past, they might have had a history of not being very good at coming to school every single day. So I have been worried about some of those kids. So right now, there are 1,826 students who are SDFC at home. Now, tomorrow starts second semester in high schools. So those numbers can change because some of these kids are going to be coming back to school that I have gone to visit. And then the next Tuesday, it is middle and elementary. So these numbers could get smaller. But right now, of those 1,826 kids, there are about 140 of them who are sitting right now at over 15 absences. Probably about 75 are sitting on more than 20. Which I'm very, very concerned about. Elementary, we do attendance all day. Middle and high, it's more by the course that you're in. So it's kind of apples and oranges. But 59 of those are elementary school students, 33 are middle school students, and 43 of those are high school students. And that is all day attendance. When you get in middle and high, you see a huge disproportionate, like if I'm a 10th grader and I have English 1 first thing in the morning, I might have 32 absences because I don't want to get up real early and log into my English class. However, I then log into my U.S. history class second period, but then I log out and I may or may not log back in the afternoon. So a high school, middle school looks different than an elementary. That kind of makes sense. Because they're courses versus all day. So of those kids, of those 135 kids, I have actually 27 of those are now on what we call orders to attend. So when a child is truant, and the school meets with them, the SRO goes to visit with the administrator, it doesn't get better, then they refer them to me, then I go visit them. Sometimes, if I can get them to come to me, I try. It's very difficult to get them to come to me, so I go to them. Sometimes I go multiple times, but I actually have right now 27 students who are waiting to go to court. 6 of those will go next Tuesday. 5 of those I hope will be put on orders to attend. The 6th one is already on an order to attend, so they're going to violate it, and they will do what we call a rule to show cause, where possibly they would be a punishment. I talked to another administrator today in the district, and they asked me a question. I had to think about this. How long, or can you remember when a parent, because in the state of South Carolina, you can get charged $50 a day because your child doesn't come to school, or 30 days in jail. And they said, when do you remember that a judge sanctioned someone like that? And I said, in all the time I've been doing it, I've never known. If a judge would just once or twice put some teeth into that, I think, we get better. So I am very concerned about SCOC at home kids and attendance. I've concentrated on the little ones because I'm worried about them. I find some of them home by themselves. Mom and dad have to work, I understand that, but it bothers me when I find a 5th grader at home doing his work by himself. Even though grandma's in the house next door, he's still by himself. So I do lots of home visits. Our SROs at each of our schools, which I also kind of am responsible for, they do lots of home visits. I counted up, we're about at 312 right now. I've probably done close to 100 of them, and they've probably done close to about 200 of them. Just gentle little reminders. Sometimes they're not happy to see us. They get upset when the law comes to their house, but we do that because they won't communicate, by calling them on the phone and saying, hey, can we talk about your child's attendance? So, questions about other things, attendance, truancy, anything like that? Did I cover everything, guys?
Yeah, she does a whole lot more than that, but this has been and this is what I wanted her to focus on with you guys, because I know I've been saying she's going to court, but she's doing this. So this is kind of what we wanted her to focus on. She handles a lot of other things on a day-to-day basis, but she has spent a tremendous amount of time trying to track down our kids and get them in there. And as I told you back in December, we are trying to force hands as much as we can, especially at the elementary school with kids who are not turning in work and who they put on an attendance plan and they didn't meet the attendance plan after the fact. So we are trying to get those kids back face-to-face come the 22nd as much as we can. So.
I am concerned today, the court system, because of COVID, has gone virtual. So to me, bringing a family into court and having a judge talk to them in a courtroom in itself was kind of, this is serious. But now we're going to do Zoom meetings to have court, and I'm not sure that it's just going to have quite the same effect. So we got to kind of work out the logistics of what that's going to look like. But I'm just not sure that'll be the same as actually going to the courthouse into the courtroom. So I'm worried about that part.
So I do have a quick question, Evie, and thank you for all of your hard work in tracking those kids down to make sure they're safe. On a state level, I know that there's some state mandates as far as what we can do for them at the end of the year. So
Right.
I'm assuming there's a correlation here between the kids that are not attending school to the ones that we saw drastically failing in those grade comparisons. So
Yeah.
in order to make sure or to prevent them from just absolutely falling through the cracks at the end of the year or failing a grade behind, what are those state mandates? Or are there right now?
We have summer school.
Well, there's the third grade retention for sure for that, for the younger. We've offered summer school at the middle level in the past for ones to try to stay on grade level. That's just been a district initiative. That's something we've paid for out of the district fund. We don't get funding for that.
And that would just be if a middle school student failed 2 or more of their core classes, the middle school
One
principal,
now.
is it one now? Okay, well, oftentimes say your promotion is going to be dependent on whether you come to summer school and improve that grade. So we've done that before.
We do this summer with some of our high school kids. Mr. Moore at Adult Ed offered them the opportunity to go down there and finish so that they could catch up and not fall through. But it's gonna be tougher because there are going to be more kids now that we've identified, and so we're going to have to try to come up with some ways. The EOC, there was an email today, they're going to come out with a report soon that talks about their findings and, with looking at the preliminary map data and that kind of stuff that the kids did. It's going to be a challenge to get them up there, but the biggest thing, we think, if we can get them in face-to-face, we feel like our odds increase tremendously to get them to be able to pass, because the teachers are willing to do whatever they can to help them.
I will tell you this, Megan, I've had several conversations with high school kids. I concentrate on the little kids first, and then I kind of went up. But many of the high school kids who have 32 absences English, I was taking next semester. It's not a big deal. So I have encouraged them, go back face to face. That's in your best bet. But I worry about that 15 and a half to 16 and a half age group of the temptation to drop out of school because they're going to get farther behind, and then, and schools are doing everything they can. Schools have been wonderful about doing, things to try to get, but they're just not very serious about it, a lot of them. And I worry about them because I don't want them to drop out of school.
Absolutely.
But we're reliant on the court system.
We are.
We can't do anything to a parent who's not sending their child to school. The court system has to do that.
Right.
So that's a place where we just have to work and do the best job we can.
Yeah.
So Ms. Hughes wears many hats, and many of those hats require her to a lot of her job is just not pleasant. I'm
Be
just
the
gonna be
bad
honest.
guy.
Dealing with
It takes
students who
that. I
are
am
getting
the bad guy.
expelled, not coming to school, upset parents, and she comes to work with a smile on her face every day and works hard. So I appreciate what she does, because it's not always the most positive job, but she does a great job at it, and we're thankful that she's willing to do it.
It
Absolutely.
actually sounds like she needs some help. From what I heard, those things, just what you talked about up here with the number of students you're trying to contact and so forth. And Steve says that's just part of what you do. I
That's
don't know.
tremendous.
That's low.
And oftentimes, the assistant principals, the SROs, they do help. So, it could be that an assistant principal in the school SRO goes out and does a home visit. Evie gets called in when it's
the
extreme.
extreme ones. Now, we have 2 social workers in our school district that have been a tremendous amount of help with me, because oftentimes, for a lot of these kids, their parents need help in a lot of different ways. So, our social workers have helped a lot. They've helped me, and they're always willing to go do home visits and find services that those kids need. So I get help from them.
I have one other question. I hesitate to ask it, but do you ever feel threatened when you go to home?
Buddy, you've known me for a long time. I could be a pretty intimidating person.
But can you be intimidated?
Could I? Most certainly I could, but for the places that I go, that I feel like I might need someone, I take an SRO with me. Or I take Lieutenant Lyles, who is over at SROs. He's always good to go. And usually, I've lived here my entire life, so I know lots of people, and if I don't know them, he knows them. So we end up, sometimes conversations are tense, but by the end of it, it ends up being a good conversation.
We don't let her go by herself.
Now, I don't,
That's good.
Yeah, that is good.
She don't go by herself.
Wow. Well, that's an eye-opening report, and we really appreciate all that you do. And I was just going to ask, do you see a lot of response from the parents that you do make home visits to? Do you see a lot of positive coming out of those?
about half.
Okay.
Other half, I just don't think education's a real high priority in that.
Right,
And I wish it was. So,
right, right.
Is that why you think you're seeing more of a decrease in the expulsions?
I'm not sure why, Megan. I've looked at some things, and I have a theory about that. A lot of it is because we don't have as many kids at school. And we're restricting things. We don't, let them do a lot. Lunches are different. Lunches and class changes have always been a time, when kids got in trouble. So we've cut down on a lot of that, so therefore there's not a time for those kids to get in trouble.
Plus, some of them are the ones who shouldn't have chosen SDLC at home but did, and now they're not at school on a regular basis. So
See,
it's
I
a whole
wouldn't
lot,
say that.
whole lot
I wouldn't.
less likely to get expelled from SDLC at home than it is from face-to-face.
Face-to-face.
I think that's what we're.
That's the majority.
Take a long time to recover from this.
I really do. Well, thank you. Again, that's a lot of work, and it's disheartening to hear where some of our students are, but we just certainly appreciate all that you and the SROs and all the administrators do. Really do. All right, let's go on to, there's a property update, and Dr. Thorsland, you want to cover that for us?
I do, and I'm going to start by introducing someone. For those of you who may not know him, but Mark Thompson joined us in the back. Mark is the director of the Performing Arts Center here in Walhalla, and he contacted me several weeks ago and asked about a building that used to be school district property and is no longer. So I'm going to get Ms. Gibson, if she can you scroll down to the yellow highlight? So I know it's kind of hard to read that, but the bottom line is that February 22nd, 2006, the school district gave what's commonly referred to as the old district office building. It's the building that's right adjacent to the Walhalla Performing Arts Center. We donated that to a 501c3 that existed at that time called the Oconee Conservatory of Fine Arts, I believe was the name. Frank Goldner was over that at the time, and that group did art lessons and music lessons. They allowed the Salem Lions Club rented out the basement, and they did their Computer for Kids program in that building. So it was used for the public good. Eventually, that nonprofit, it's my understanding, they ceased to exist. Is that right? So they kind of folded, and they gave the building to the Walhalla Performing Arts Center. Now that building's, it's been used a little bit. I think the YMCA has used it maybe in the summer a little bit, but it's largely being unused and certainly underutilized. And Mark asked me if he thought the school district would release some restrictions. And the highlighted part of this, when the school board in 2006 gave this building to the Conservatory of Fine Arts, it said this conveyance is made subject to the understanding that the property shall be used by the grantee for public, educational, cultural, and/or recreational purposes for such other purposes as will provide for the general education and welfare of the public. If it is no longer used by the grantee for those reasons, then let's see, it will be transferred to another organization that will use it for those things. So the bottom line is, we put some stipulations on the building when we gave it away. We don't know of any organization or entity in the county that wants that building for educational purposes. Right now, it's a vacant building. A vacant school building is a blight in the community. It just doesn't need to be used. So Mark asked me if he thought you as a school board would be open to removing that restriction from this deed. And I think at your places, we got it after we sent the agenda out, but I think at your places there's a law firm has come up with a document that I'm going to ask. It's my recommendation that we would approve this as written. It's titled Revocation and Release of Restrictions to that deed. I feel like if Mark and his board, with the cooperation of the city of Walhalla or even county officials, if they could find a business that wanted to be housed in there, if they could turn that building into Airbnb or perhaps even a hotel of some kind, something that would be, just make that building utilized. I think it would be good for the community, and essentially it would be good for the school district, because if that building gets on the tax rolls, then it's good for everybody. So it's not helping anybody sitting vacant, and my recommendation to you would be that we approve this revocation and release of restrictions, and if you would just make it part of the motion, if you're willing to do it, that Mr. Hamby or I could be the signers on that. And Mr. Thompson has a law firm that's willing to do the paperwork and can get all that done, but we would just certainly have it in the minutes here that you approve that. Mr. Hamby or I would sign and take care of that, but then that would free up the Performing Arts Center to try to find a good use for that building that would be productive to the community.
Anyone have any more questions?
No, I believe Dr. Thorson hit all the points. A few things on the building, just if you're not aware, our facility is a freestanding nonprofit. We are not a budget line item with the city nor the county. So having had this property, we keep the insurance, the maintenance, the upkeep of the building. The Lions Club moved out because the repairs of the computers for you folks, I guess, became obsolete. So they left there. The Y used it limited, very limited this year, and there, of course, as they grow, they're looking for different facilities to continue on. The building for us could be an asset. This year has been and will continue to be very difficult for us. I started with staff of 1, went up to 3, and now I'm back down to 1 1/4. We could use that building. We've talked with Mayor Danny Edwards and City Manager Brent Taylor in regards to, they've been trying to solicit someone to come into town to do a small boutique hotel or a property and just not have the right facility to outfit it. We actually approached the city about possibly taking the building and putting City Hall, the police department, and the water department in there. But it's going to run between $1 million and $2 million depending on how you outfit it with, police department. And so they didn't have the budget to do it right now, but they, in talks with Brent and Danny, we will count on them and follow their lead to have them help solicit that property to bring in an investor to help, not only help our facility, but the little cul-de-sac. We've got the rec center and our building and bring that into town. So, as I mentioned to Brent and Danny, if the rec center was to go away, or the pool was to go away, or the museum was to go away, or the library, and we are the only performing arts center in Oconee County, and we got a $5,000 in ATAX money last year, and aside from that, the majority, 95% of our revenue is through ticketing. So this could be a big asset to help us, but also help the community. So we'd appreciate any assistance and any questions you may have.
And just a plug for Mark, since he's been here, if you just look in the paper, the media, and see what kind of shows he's bringing to Walhalla and to Oconee County, he's done a great job. And to be a small community, we get some pretty good entertainment out of that building. So I want to just publicly thank him, and I think anything we can do to help that organization is a good thing. So anyway, my recommendation would be that you approve this paperwork here that's at your places.
Okay. So each of you have a copy of the revocation and release of restrictions. Does anybody have any questions anymore for Dr. Thorsland or for Mr. Thompson? All right. Do I hear a motion that we allow Dr. Thorsland or Mr. Hanby to sign and we release the restrictions on the building as the ones that were highlighted, and the deed is pointed out? It would just be a signing of the revocation release of restrictions.
Madam Chairman, I move that the board approve the recommendation of administration on the revocation and release of restrictions to be signed by Dr. Thorsland or Mr. Hale.
Okay. Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion at all? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? All right, we'll let you take care of that, and thank you for coming and speaking with us tonight. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
And good luck to you.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Handy.
Yes, so we're getting all the things as we start the new year for what's coming up. So we are at the end of our time period for our, it says architect and engineering, but also our construction management contracts. And with two things, with our situation, the way we are with our building plan, and with all the COVID, and I just want to say a little bit that goes into it. Mr. Herring was on our committee last time. For us to do an RFP, request for proposal, for new architect and engineering and construction management firm, we have to put those out. It's about a 90-page document. But then when everybody submits them, we have to get a committee to narrow it down. But part of that too is when we get our finalists, we drove all over the upstate on multiple days trying to look at the work of the A&E firm or the contractor and that, talk to the people that they built schools for, work with all those. So in the COVID situation we have in the spring, not a whole lot of people are inviting people into their schools to come visit and see what's going on and do that kind of thing. So that's one of our concerns and one of the reasons why we're asking this. The other is, for us, we are not going to have, I guess that's considered wood, we're not going to have building projects in the next year because we have to bank the money we're getting from our 8% to pay for the upcoming Seneca Middle School. So we're not taking work away from anybody who would potentially be on there because we're really not going to have anything to do. We're trying to, it's more's on us, and we're trying to put back, we've got a budget laid out, and we're trying to put back a certain amount of money out of each time we sell our bonds and get our 8% money at the end of February, first part of March. So we would basically sit for a couple of years on a new 5-year deal, and if we pick folks, they won't be able to do anything. We're currently in with Trail and Jumper Carter Cities for the design and the build of Seneca Middle School. So, and we've already started that process. So that's another thing. We don't feel like we would be cutting anybody out and not giving them an opportunity. Right now, we currently have Jumper Carter Cities and McMillan Patterson Smith as our 2 A&E firms. We also have Trail and J. Davis as our 2 construction management firms. So we still have some variety if there was an emergency or a smaller thing, but really it's not going to be anything that we would need anybody for us to choose from or go through, and we'd be wasting at least a year of their 5-year contract in our minds if we go through that, because we don't have the money to do other projects at this point. That's going to take up the next 3 years of the majority of what we're trying to spend, because that's right now a $42 million job. So we, through the procurement, so the maximum multi-term contract is 5 years. It can be extended to 7 by the superintendent, but to go an additional year, contracts must be approved by the board. So what we're asking is that we be allowed to not put out the RFP for the construction firms or A&E firms until next spring, with the understanding that hopefully the COVID situation will be better, and again, we're not costing anybody business per se, because we're not doing any business with anybody at this point, because we're trying to save our money. We are paying a little bit to the architect firm and a small amount of Trail as we design stuff. We meet every 2 weeks through Zoom to do prep work and that kind of stuff, and look at the pre-design and dealing with that. But you know, as far as trying to do a $3 million project here or add something for $4 million here, we can't do it. We just can't fit in. So that's kind of our logic. So we don't want to waste people's time. We don't want to waste people's opportunity. We will definitely need to do it next year, and that'll get us closer to the Seneca Middle coming to fruition, and then there'll still be years on the end of that where we would want to do whatever you guys recommend after Seneca Middle. So, does that make sense?
It does.
You're asking for a 1-year extension, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah.
With the ones we currently have.
That would be keeping all 4 firms.
Right.
But what really made me think this made sense is if we hired, let's just assume we hired 4 new firms, completely new firms, and none of the 4 that we have on contract right now were kept. We're going to get those new firms and say, oh, by the way, we've already got people under contract doing Seneca Middle, so we're not starting a new building project until X date. So the first couple of years of their contract, they just be twiddling their thumbs with no benefit. So it does, in my mind, make a lot of sense to extend the 4 that we have.
And I just think it'd be difficult to give other people a fair chance
If
with
we can't go see the work.
the way, you know, having to do everything through Zoom, and, you know, we go to facilities, and we walk the building, and we talk to the principal that's there when the building project was going on, or we talk to the person in my position in the district, or Richard's position in the district, and that, and, you know, we spend a lot of time and energy to try to make a good choice on those, and it's a stressful time in normal circumstances, but try to do it by looking at things they're sending you and that kind of stuff in a 3D rendering, or, you know, having a drone pictures of the stuff. It's just not the same for us. So it's kind of twofold, but the main thing is we don't want to waste people's time, and we don't feel like we're doing anybody a disservice or being unfair to anybody out there who down the road wants to bid on it and trying to get into the district, because we just don't have jobs going right now in that. Just say we pocketed money. We put it in the account where Gloria says you can't get to until we.
The one thing that could happen, that I guess that could prevent a company from getting work, if we had some type of huge mechanical breakdown at one of our schools and we had to replace an HVAC system. But we're not expecting, that was completely unexpected. Then we would use
we already have
people that's currently under contract. But as far as work that we know is out there and that we're planning for, nothing exists. That's not to say that something couldn't happen that causes us to need their service.
But like on those, we have Walter on contract. So
We have
still
one there, so that's even a separate contract.
Unless we're building something or renovating something where we got to have an architect involved and a construction management team, and I mean, you can't say anything because we had a tornado come through that was very close to our buildings and that, and it could very easily damage some. So you could have a storm that could do something, but that it would have to be something out of the ordinary before we would need to use anybody else.
Under the circumstances, I feel comfortable moving that we extend the contract for 1 year for the two A&E and the construction companies that you have under contract.
All right. So we have a motion on the floor to extend the,
I did want to ask one other question. I don't know if-
and you can.
Okay. I didn't know if this was, you know, if we needed to wait till after Mr. Bear's motion, but just as we're going into a new facilities program with Seneca Middle, is it possible to have those 4 firms come in maybe quarterly and give a report to the board in light of transparency in our capital programs? And is that something to consider?
Yeah, we could have, now, for the Seneca Middle, it's Jumper Carter Cease, it's the A&E, so Joel Carter, one of the owners. In fact, I told them when we met, because you and I had that conversation a little bit, that we want to do that. You just tell me how often you want to do it, and we can do an update. Now, it's a little harder now just because we're so much pre-planning, but we could do one, you know, look at it and see. After we do the bond sales and the money stuff comes through and we see where we stand, I can set it up for both to come together or them to come at separate times. They'll be more than happy to come present and answer any questions and show you where we are. We don't have a problem with that at all.
Thank you.
And another thing to think about, we could probably put it off till maybe board retreat in summer, but at some point, it's time to start thinking about what's next.
We got a list we want to share with you.
But that list can go,
Always have a
that
list.
list can go several different directions.
Sure it can.
There are going to be some tough decisions to make after Seneca Middle's built as to, you know, the priority order. So it's going to certainly take some direction from you to make those determinations. So we've got some work to do in the next 12 months.
Right.
Just with our building program direction.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion on the floor to extend our, to extend the architect and engineering contract for 1 year using the same 4 firms that we have. Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion? All right, all in favor? All right. All right, and now Mrs. Simmons, our local board-approved courses, please.
All right, last month at the board meeting, I kind of went into detail on our local board-approved courses for the upcoming school year. You have a comprehensive list of what those courses are, and then just the ones highlighted in yellow are the ones we're looking at approval. So those are both our Character Ed 2 and 3 at Oconee Academy, Suzanne Rogers, Adam Hopkins, and Tracy Long, kind of tag team on teaching the first Character Ed classes, and will continue with that upon approval. They kind of just build on top of each other with those leadership skills and learning of different character education traits. The next one we have is our Marching Band Auxiliary Color Guard 3, which is at Walhalla High School and Seneca High School. Mr. Udell created this application for us. He's the band director at Walhalla High School. It's just a curricular extension of our competitive color guard and winter guard, and learning those more performance and evaluation skills in that particular class. And then our last one is Marketing Senior Seminar at Hamilton Career and Technology Center. That one was completed by Amy Welch, who will also be teaching that class there upon approval. It's really for advanced marketing students, and it is a class that's built around the marketing pathway standards, and so it would be a great opportunity for those 12th graders interested in marketing as that career experience.
All right, we need to vote on those tonight. Does anyone have any questions of Mrs. Simmons? All right, do I hear a motion that we approve the addition of the 5 courses that have been presented to the local board approved courses to be offered during the 2021-22 school year?
Madam Chair, I would like to move that we approve the courses that have been presented by Ms. Simmons, character education, the marching band auxiliary and color guard, as well as the marketing senior seminar for school year 2020-21.
Okay. All right. Any more questions? All in favor? All right, thank you.
Can I just make, that was for next year?
2021,
22. Mhm.
Correct.
All right. And then we had that school calendar.
When you start getting, it's hard when you got 2020, 21, 22.
I know,
They all
it's
kind of
difficult.
just run together. Speaking of run together, it seems like we just approved the calendar just a little while ago. I think last year we approved officially 3 for this current school year, so because of COVID and everything. But we would like to get this one approved so that our folks have plenty of time to prepare that. And it looks almost like it did when we presented it last month and talked about it. Over the break, we got a message from Dr. DeAndrea, who's over the e-learning cohort and that, and we were told that we had to continue to include the 3 makeup days because that's per state statute, so we couldn't just take them out, even though we don't plan to use them. So there we are. They are in there. We put them at the end of the calendar just to make it simpler for that. Hopefully, nothing would cause us to do that, because if you look at the elementary calendar, that would mean we'd come back after Memorial Day for 1 full day and 2 half days, and that would be not good. But we wanted to make sure we're following the letter of that law. So we got that. We still have the recommendation in for our middle and high schools to start 3 days earlier than our elementary school. We're basing that on our approval we got for this year, and the way the state has talked about things can continue and that we're approved. We are under the impression that we will be approved again for middle and high only to start a little earlier. And we're not doing a full week, we're only doing 3 days, because Dr. Thorson got that to work so that we could get enough days in to have first semester completed by Christmas, which has been our goal for as long as we've been talking about calendars. for both our students to take exams before Christmas. Because we had students who took their exams last week, Thursday and Friday. We were worried to death on the snow potential on Friday that it was going to mess our exams up, the last day of the semester. So this would alleviate that problem, allow them to finish before Christmas. It would also allow our students who are taking dual enrollment classes to be in those on time. And we just feel like it's the best option for our high school and middle school kids. While ideally we'd like to get our elementary students on that, we can't really do that without going against the wishes and the rules that are in place, and we don't want to do that, intentionally do that. So we would start them on the first official day, which would be the 16th, which is what state law says, the third Monday of August for them. So there'd be a 3-day difference. Obviously, 3 days at the beginning where elementary would not be in school while middle and high were. Then the converse is 3 days at the end for elementary. They have additional days there when middle and high would be out. So we think that this gives our families plenty of time to make arrangements. It's 3 days. If the high school older brother or sister is the caretaker of the elementary, they would have 3 days, that they would have to come up with a plan for. But we think 8 months is plenty of time to give them to make that. It's not like they got to do it for a whole month or anything. So we just feel like this is the best calendar for instruction for our teachers and our kids, and so it's what we would like to recommend. And the quicker we get it out to the public, the better off we are typically. So.
Well, it looks good, and the purpose behind it is it's just so important to get that first semester finished. So, and 3 days doesn't appear to be a lot compared to what the week was. I don't know, a week just sounded like a long time, I think, and we're getting it out early enough. So, does anybody have any questions, any concerns about that we want to address before we vote? All right, then I would entertain a motion to accept the 2021-2022 school calendars for the elementary school, and then a separate calendar for the middle and high school.
So move.
Okay. Okay. I have a motion and a second, and no questions, I don't guess. So all in favor? All right, and that passes unanimously also. All right, and we have reached the end of our regular meeting agenda. At this time, we will go into executive session if there are no objections. All right. Thank y'all for being here with us tonight. We appreciate you coming, and unfortunately, we have to clear this room because we have to have executive session in here, so thank you very much for coming. Thank you.